Welcome to the show, guys. I'm super excited. It is draft week, and today we are talking about 5 underrated fantasy football players. These guys just not getting the respect they deserve. They're not getting the love. You can call them fantasy football sleepers. That's fine. But I just think their talent is underrated, and their average draft position based on the consensus, the rankings, is showing that there's no respect for these guys. And I think there's a ton of upside for these guys this year, especially for fantasy football 2022. Again, you can call them fantasy football sleepers. I like to call them underrated. They're not getting the love and respect they deserve. Now, as I said, it is draft week. I'm excited. And what I love about draft week is football's back, number one. We get to watch football. We get to see where these rookies end up. Where the rookies land really predicates their fantasy football value, okay? There's a lot of talk about these rookies and all these big names coming in at running back, Breece Hall and all this stuff. I don't care until I see where they land, because if Breece Hall lands on, lands with, let's say he lands with Derrick Henry, he's probably not going to get the volume that you think he's going to get. So we want to make sure the landing spot for these guys is at the right on the right team. That's crucial. So are they going to get the volume? Are they going to get the workload? Are they going to be the number one RB on that team? Is it going to be a committee? Those are the questions that I ask myself every single year when I'm drafting. Now, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys do click the subscribe button. I help you guys crush your leagues. This is outside of the box, non-consensus rankings. Make sure you guys click subscribe and get that 16-round draft solution, because that's what I prep for. When the draft happens, a week after the draft, give or take a couple of days, I release a 16-round draft solution, giving you all the optimal players to draft and which round to draft them. Get 16 rounds, guys. I've linked it below. Head on over to thefantasyfootballcounselor.com. All right, guys, let's roll into this right now. The first underrated player. Let's talk about underrated players today, because underrated is important. These guys need respect, and they're just not getting it. So the first underrated player is David Montgomery. Now, David Montgomery, guys, hasn't really got it going. Going into his fourth season, hasn't really got it going, I should say. Back a couple years ago, 2020, he had a 1,000-yard rushing season, 1,070 yards, 8 touchdowns. That was his best year, and he did it on his most attempts, 247. His attempts went down last year, but he only played 13 games, had a bit of an injury, and he had Nagy as a coach. In comes in this new head coach, Matt Eberflus, or whatever his name is. I think he was a defensive coordinator for the Colts in the league for about over 10, 15 years or something like that. This coach is coming in. I don't know his coaching style. All I know is his name is not Matt Nagy. Okay? His name is not Nagy. That's all I care about. So when I look at a guy like David Montgomery, I'm seeing a guy that's going to probably get more opportunity, because Nagy really hindered this guy. Let's be honest. Nagy hindered David Montgomery, and that's the bottom line. Now, again, David Montgomery, a little banged up last year, had 225 attempts, 7 touchdowns, 3.8 yards per carry. I still think he's very talented. He's going into his fourth season, still relatively young. He was a third-round pick. I still think he's talented. And, again, from what I hear, the new coach, Matt, is saying that he's going to really focus on Fields and building up the quarterback and focusing on building around Justin Fields and all that stuff. And I think Montgomery's got to be a big focal point of that offense. And again, they still got to figure out their wide receiver situation. I know Mooney's really good, but David Montgomery could really have an opportunity to shine this year if given that volume. I would assume they might bring in a backup. They might do some things there. I don't know, at the running back position. I don't know. I got to see what happens after the NFL draft. But the talent is there, and I just think he's underrated, currently sitting at 17th amongst running backs. Okay, outside the top 15. Now, there's a ton of other running backs that are ahead of him that I like David Montgomery a lot more than them. So David Montgomery, a ton of upside this year, a ton of talent if he gets that volume, and I hope he does. With Nagy being gone, the opportunity is there, okay? Next player that's underrated, and again, I got to talk about this guy. I keep talking about him in my sleeper videos, is Devonta Smith. This is a guy that was a first-round pick, 10th overall last year in 2021, okay? He had to build that rapport with Hurts. Hurts and him, they're connecting, they're getting better. Looks like the Eagles are going to stay with Hurts. Again, we're going to have to see what happens with the draft. Hurts was under a lot of pressure last year. Hopefully they improve the O-line. Miles Sanders, I don't know if he's the solution there. He gets banged up. I don't know what they're going to do at running back. So, still some questions to be answered, but if they do not address the wide receiver position, Smith is the wide receiver one on that team. And last year, 104 targets. That's not enough. We need to see more targets, 64 receptions. and only 5 touchdowns. So I need to see more out of Smith, and I think the Eagles need to see more out of Smith. Now, the thing is, what you're saying, well, Joe, he only had 5 touchdowns, 916 yards, didn't get the receptions, only 64. Why should I be excited about Devonta Smith? Well, because he was a first-round pick. Okay, that's huge, right? They're going to use him. At the time of this recording, he's the wide receiver 1. The rapport is going to be there with Hurts, and the fact that his numbers weren't that big shows that there could be more of a ceiling to be had. I don't think he scratched the surface on the talent. So, Devonta Smith, a ton of upside. I like him. I think he's underrated. Currently sitting 32nd on the consensus rankings of PPR amongst wide receivers. You're going to get a wide receiver later. This guy's underrated. Again, a first-round talent was where he was drafted. You know, like those guys like Jamar Chase and Waddle, right? Jalen Waddle. So Devonta Smith, that type of caliber of a wide receiver, just didn't get the volume last year. So I am excited about Devonta Smith. Number 3, this guy is completely underrated. He was also a first-round pick a couple years ago, going into his 3rd season, is Jeudy. Now, Jeudy, guys, I got to talk about him real quick. He was banged up last year, just never really got going. I talk about him in my sleeper videos as well, and I look at him here. He's only had 3 touchdowns over the past 2 seasons. Only played 10 games last year, but hadn't had a good quarterback. Just never got going. Again, 2020, round 1, 15th pick overall. The talent is there. The youth is there. The route running is phenomenal. The hands are great. Just never got going. From what we're hearing, he has been training, in the offseason with Russell Wilson. They've been working together. This could genuinely be a special connection. If Russell Wilson stays healthy and Jerry Jeudy both stay healthy, this is going to be a phenomenal connection. Not to mention, I really believe Russell Wilson has a resurgence. I think he's going to bounce back. I think he's going to have a great season. I think he's going to be ignited and excited to be with the Broncos. So I'm looking at Jerry Jeudy and I'm thinking, man, early draft capital years ago, never really got going. If he's healthy, he's going to get the receptions. He's going to be a PPR monster, and he's currently sitting 23rd on the consensus rankings. Him and Courtland Sutton are both, in their own rights, respectively, underrated. Those guys are good talent. They just never really got it going. Sutton has shown some flashes, but Jeudy not so much. So Jeudy, under the radar, fantasy football sleeper. And not only that, I just think he's underrated, based on what we've seen over the past 2 years. He has some upside this year, especially with Russell Wilson there. I'm genuinely excited about this, okay? The 4th guy here is Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell sitting 22nd amongst running backs as of the time of this recording. Now, Elijah Mitchell, very young, obviously, only played 11 games last year. We haven't really seen what he's capable of completely, but in the 11 games he played, he had quite a few attempts, 207 attempts, 4.7 yards per carry, 963 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Imagine if he played the full season. You're looking at 10 touchdowns and well over, I would say well over 1,200 yards, easily, maybe even 1,500 yards on the ground. So Elijah Mitchell right now, going into his 2nd season, was a 6th-round pick, so already being underrated when he was drafted, did well when he started. He was playing hurt towards the end of the rookie season. I'm just reading here. Required a cleanup procedure on his knee. Mitchell expects to be fully healthy ahead of his training camp, so we should be good, guys, heading into draft day for fantasy football. He is only 23. Just reading if there's any updates on him. Again, the 4.6 yards per carry or 4.7 yards per carry, very appealing. Again, just, maybe injury plagues him. I don't know. I don't think so. But either way, I like Elijah Mitchell. The youth is there. And I'm not saying he's going to be my RB1. I'm saying that I'm going to get him as probably an RB3, 4. And he's going to be an RB1 on his team, right? Theoretically. So Mitchell, I think people are sleeping on him. I think the talent is there. I think the volume is going to be there. And I'm not a guy that drafts 49ers running backs, but I think Elijah Mitchell could be good value and could be special, okay? And the 5th guy here, again, not the most exciting person to talk about, but Matt Ryan, currently sitting 21st amongst quarterbacks, completely underrated talent on new offense. Obviously, Michael Pittman's kind of the only receiver at the time of this recording. I think they're going to obviously put some more weapons around him at the receiver position, but they've got Jonathan Taylor. They've got a great O-line. He's a pocket passer, and he finally is going to have time to throw the ball. Matt Ryan is a guy that throws the ball a lot. And again, he's going to have more time to do it. So very excited about Matt Ryan. Very excited about the opportunity with him and the Colts. I think this is going to, again, reignite his career, give him some hope for a Super Bowl run. He's got the talent. He's got the opportunity. I think this is genuinely a great fit for the Colts and Matt Ryan. You couldn't ask for a better position for Matt Ryan to be. They just need to put more offensive weapons around him and help him grow and succeed. But in regards to fantasy, I mean, amazing value. You get him as your QB2, as a backup quarterback. You always back up your quarterbacks, by the way, and he could easily be a starter. He could be a top 5 finisher in fantasy points amongst quarterback. I know that's a bold statement, and I only say that because there's just so much good talent at quarterback with Mahomes and Herbert and Allen and Lamar, and there's just so many big names that's going to push Ryan out because it's hard for him to compete with running backs that are running a lot and getting those rushing touchdowns. But in the air, this guy can get it done if he gets his touchdowns up, keeps his interceptions low, gets his passing yards up, which he always, well over 4,000 yards every year. And again, he was under pressure a lot, more than anybody else last year with the Falcons. And now he's got a good O-line. So I am excited about Matt Ryan. I think he's just an underrated talent. I know he's getting up in age. And at the end of the day, though, still, if you want a backup quarterback who's going to throw a ton and have more time to do it, Matt Ryan's the guy. I think he's underrated. So there's 5 underrated players for you guys. David Montgomery, Devonta Smith, Jerry Jeudy, Matt Ryan, and Elijah Mitchell. All underrated. Good value for fantasy football at the time of this recording. And again, just really could boom at their respective positions. All top of the tier at their positions, right? You got Jeudy. I mean, you could say Sutton's the one there, but everybody else is the one at their position, right? All right, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe, get that 16-round draft solution, thumbs up, and let me know below who is underrated for fantasy football 2022. Love to get your feedback. Draft week is here, and fantasy football just around the corner. I'm out.